Hi, good morning. Welcome everyone to our virtual event today. Discover the synergistic value of Intel vPro, VMware Workspace ONE and Dell Technologies. My name is Michelle and I'm the manager of the Unified Workspace community. Just before we get into the session, I do have some announcements and updates, and things might start to look a little different around here over the coming months. So since its launch in December 2019, we've built a great group of customers within the Dell Technologies Unified Workspace community. And ever since its inception, we've discussed the prospect of merging it with Dell's other communities because a number of you are members of them. There's a lot of overlaps in membership and content topics, so it makes sense to combine it and make it a better overall experience for our members. So the new combined community will be called Dell Technologies User Community, or DTUC for short. And we're projecting to launch in May before Dell Technologies World on the 22nd. So the community will remain a customer-led organisation and will be focused on how to best serve our members. We're expanding our content to focus on other parts of the business outside of Dell Client Solutions. So that will be including subjects such as data protection, edge computing, servers, storage, Dell Apex, and many more. We have some really nice new branding and some really exciting things coming up over the next few months. The goal is to be a one-stop shop for members to access the latest content on all Dell Technologies products, solutions, services and offerings. We plan to provide members with more access to a variety of Dell Technologies resources, helping you solidify yourselves as SMEs within your field. And you may be wondering, what does this mean for you? Well, your membership is still valid, it's still free. There'll be more relevant content than ever. You can subscribe to the type of content that you want to hear about. And what's really exciting, and something I've never been able to do as the community manager, thanks to the you-know-what in 2020, is host some local chapters with in-person events and meetups. So this is really exciting stuff for us. If you are interested in hosting a local meetup, or if you have an idea for a local event, then contact our member services. We'll post the links to our member services emails in the chat if that's possible, so on. And if you have any other questions, please also feel free to reach out to us via those emails. If we could just go to the next slide on housekeeping. It's the usual drill with housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded. If you could stay on mute, feel free to go on camera. And if you do have a question, use the raise hand function in Zoom, or post your question in chat and we'll try our best to reply. The next slide, we are sending out a post-event survey, and 4 randomly picked responders will win a $25 Amazon gift card. And then just on the next slide, before I hand over to the speakers, one last thing from me, and that's just to plug our next event on the 28th next week. So if you're interested, please do register. I think if we also put a link to this in the chat as the event's going on, please. And yeah, that's it from me, I think. I will now hand over to our speakers. So thank you again for joining. I hope you enjoy yourselves, and over to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. My name is Jocelyn Thompson. I'm a product manager at Dell Technologies supporting VMware Workspace ONE. We are so happy that you've joined us today for this webinar. We're excited to talk about and demonstrate some recent integrations across Dell commercial devices, Intel vPro technology, and VMware Workspace ONE. These integrations offer a number of new benefits to IT teams when these technologies are used together. For instance, enabling easy out-of-band PC management, improving the security of your users' workspace, and increasing productivity of your users. So we have a lot to dig into today. Before we get started, allow me to introduce you to our fantastic panel of experts here for this discussion. First, from Dell, we have Gus Chavira. Gus is a senior solutions architect focused on guiding and evolving Dell's workspace experience and products for Dell customers. He has a long career across a number of industries focused on IT management, enterprise architecture, and support and services. Thank you, Gus, for being here. Next, from Intel, we have Josh Copeland. Josh is the lead technical solutions specialist within Intel's client computing technical sales organization, focusing on all things commercial client. He is currently focused on architecting solutions and implementation plans for scale, deploying business client technologies within large enterprise. Thank you, Josh, for being here. And finally, we have from VMware, we have Chris Reed. Chris is the Director of End User Computing Technical Strategy within VMware's Office of the CTO. Chris's focus is to help build and align customer needs with market strategy. He's an award-winning influential business and technology leader with over 28 years of industry experience. Thank you, Chris, for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, first, before we dig into the details and benefits of the integrations, let's kick off with a brief overview of the history of this partnership and then each of these technologies. Gus, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Jocelyn. So kind of want to talk a little bit, first setting the stage. Dell, we take an outcomes-based approach to security and management, first of all. It's a little different from some other providers. Instead of offering point solutions, which we obviously do, we really want to focus on the holistic portfolio to achieve key outcomes, like making users less prone to attacks, enabling interoperability, essentially finding ways to simplify that inherent complexity that exists today between security and IT. The next thing is we also want to strive to secure our devices in a multifaceted way as we kind of step towards this idea that we call zero trust. Device trust and identity trust are two of many pillars in the zero trust architecture paradigm. And they're something that we consider heavily when we're building out these solutions, these secure and manageability solutions, especially when we're talking about hybrid workforces where folks are all over the place, right? In the office, outside. And we're constantly looking for ways to enable that IT with the ability to secure and manage those end users, remote or otherwise, and basically allow employees the flexibility to work wherever and whenever and however, right? I think that's the most important thing that we're talking about here. We see this in our Dell, particularly in Dell, in our commercial PCs, which are not only built with security in mind, they're actually built with feature sets that at the hardware and firmware level that overall help reduce that attack surface at the foundational level, right? So we're not just talking about at the operating system, we need to secure things below the OS. And this allows our devices upon delivery to be secured at that sort of level, right? Then we take a look at our manageability solutions in which we plug many of these feature sets into what we'll talk about later, like Workspace ONE and Intel, is Dell Command Suite, where we're making sure our device remains trusted throughout its entire lifespan and its lifetime. We're trying to streamline that endpoint management, which is a growing challenge as the world sort of shifts more to hybrid workforce. I think most of you already know that. And we do this by empowering the IT teams with visibility, control, and insights that allow them to manage these devices below the operating system, or as I like to say, below the OS, with things like the ability to make changes for a variety of BIOS settings, right? Maybe you need to make a change on how the BIOS reacts and you don't necessarily have physical access to the device. Being able to control the way that Dell updates its firmware and BIOS, we need to maybe make changes or make an emergency update. And then also being able to determine if the BIOS has vulnerability, right? So it can be, it is rare, but it can be attacked. And so we definitely have capabilities that do off-host verification to ensure your BIOS integrity is there. And then really want to talk about this long history of working with specialized partners such as VMware and Intel to really improve user experience. And that's today why we've gotten together to talk about this. As many of y'all know, we started with Dell Command Suite integration in Workspace ONE. It's particularly Dell Command Update so that we can update the firmware and BIOSes, but also Dell Command Monitor so that we can make changes, like, for example, remotely change the BIOS password on a fleet of devices rather than doing it one by one or not knowing what the BIOS passwords are. And then we sort of moved on to Dell Trusted Device Integration, where I talked about that off-host verification of the BIOS. So we could show within Workspace ONE whether that device is vulnerable or not with a simple green dot or a red dot or a yellow dot showing we don't have a status. And I'll let Josh and Chris talk a little bit more and layer on to the sort of discussion. But I want you all to know that together our extended capabilities really have the power to transform this UEM experience in a way that we individually couldn't do. And the collective partnership have done a really great job. And so this is just, think of this as a continuation of that integration that we've been doing for many years together. Which takes us to the topic at hand. What are we going to talk about today? It's really about Dell, Intel, and VMware, us seeing a key opportunity where we see that customers have devices and they need to sort of manage and look at them in a holistic way so that we can overall improve the security posture without ultimately sacrificing the employee productivity, right? So these integrations enable that critical zero trust security paradigm with updates and patching and support and all that sort of boring stuff that sometimes is hard to do, but can be easier to manage from these kinds of integration efforts. So no matter whether the PC is turned on or off or asleep or without a functional OS, we definitely have abilities to sort of remove those critical barriers. And then really that's ultimately why we created these integrations, because if you have a Dell commercial PC today, you're able to unlock these really interesting capabilities today. And we're excited to talk to you more about the integration, and hopefully we'll actually show you at the end of how some of these things look. So I'll pass it back to you, Jocelyn.
Awesome. Thanks, Gus. Great overview. So Josh, could you share a little bit about Intel vPro technology?
Sure. Yeah. So the vPro platform is the business computing foundation, and it basically allows users to take advantage of high-level performance, multi-layer security, reliable stability, and complete manageability of the device. And all of these capabilities make possible the integration that we're talking about today with Workspace ONE and Dell. More specifically, the hardware-based manageability via active management technology, or AMT, allows us to maintain connection, monitor, and interact with a remote device during something like an imaging process. And all of these features of the vPro platform, they all compact into form factors that you're familiar with, from like the ultralight Dell PCs to the Dell workstations and commercial PC line. The vPro platform provides basically just the framework for building these innovative collaborative solutions that you're going to see today. And building on what Gus said, one of the key features of the vPro platform is manageability. So when the office is everywhere like it is today, vPro helps equip your IT department with the tools and the ability to secure and manage those devices without requiring a physical touch. And it does so securely outside the corporate firewall. So there's no need for a VPN or an OS at all to be able to connect to these devices. It's making that secure connection at the hardware level. And another key capability of vPro is just out-of-band support in general for IT. Also on-prem, all of these features help enable your IT department with out-of-band support, be that hardware KVM or some more advanced features of the platform, or just simply being able to kind of toggle power on that particular remote device.
Got it. Thanks so much, Josh. Chris, can you give us a bit of information about VMware Workspace ONE?
Be happy to. So first, everybody knows what VMware Workspace ONE is, right? It's device management. Right. So we come from a history of device management. And if you remember AirWatch, one horrible name, like not Big Brotherish at all, like AirWatch, we're watching you. What we have become is an employee experience platform. Now, let me explain that. Does that mean we manage devices? Yes, it does. What we're doing specifically, Dell provides industry-leading secure supply chain and delivering of devices, the whole logistical nightmare that it is to deliver a business class computer with all the security extensions and updates with the Dell Command Suite. Intel delivers the vPro, I just made a new term, vPro platform, which gives you things like software guard extensions and in-memory encryption and all the other security things, which ultimately come to zero trust. Of the 5 categories of zero trust being device trust, which I need to trust the logistics, I need to trust the device. What in the world does Workspace ONE do? We're right in the middle, bringing those things together. So rather than just managing a device, which we do, complete life cycle, application deployment, patching, management, et cetera, of Windows in this case, we see ourselves, and Gus mentioned it earlier, a term called UEM, which is Unified Endpoint Management. Here's our goal. Yes, I want to manage your device, but more importantly, let me manage your experience across all those devices, whether it's an Android device, whether it's a Chromebook, whether it's a Windows device, whatever that device looks like. And what we're able to do specifically with Dell and vPro is bring together the various pillars of zero trust and bring them together at point of authentication, meaning Gus clicks on an application. Gus's Intel platform says, wait a second, this device is out of kilter. Therefore, at authentication, we can, right, say, sorry, Gus, no soup for you. And actually says no soup for you, right? No, it doesn't. It just access denied. And what we're trying to do is to bring those together to move beyond mobile device management, which was great in the 90s, to this unified work experience. Now, Gus mentioned before, VMware and Dell have a deep history of this. At some point, our leadership sat down with Gelsinger and sat down with Michael Dell and said, hey, let's all be friends. And ultimately, out of those conversations, this is what happened. So I've been privy to all of this for about 2.5 years now. It's really exciting to be able to talk about something that's come to fruition and we're actually seeing customer adoption on and great value. And as both Josh has said and Gus has said, going out and touching a device, even when the operating system is, and I'm going to use that term here, kaput, no longer any good. So very, very good stuff there. And yeah, I'll turn it back.
Yeah. So my quick recap of this, right? It's just, I love that term kaput because that's what IT people have to deal with, right? But from an end user perspective, I think they're part of this scenario, right? We have to make whatever we do from an IT perspective work seamlessly with our end users. If we don't do that, then that's our lowest common denominator, right? They're going to be mad, and no matter how well a device is secured, it's just not going to be usable. A whole bunch of bad things happen there. But then the IT professionals, they really need the ability to sort of deliver a solution that sort of bolsters that trust factor, because we just don't know where they're taking their devices. There's BYOD, there's corporate issue, there's just all these different things, mobile phones. And so we need to really just assume that things are always going to be bad and create a paradigm that works in an easy fashion. And then lastly, it's like we've talked about it all the time, but hybrid workforce, it is a very difficult thing, right? It is something where we don't have that reach. We don't know what networks they're on. We have to make sure that we are able to get at the devices so that we can do things to them and improve their postures. And this integration is really just a good demonstration in general about how we start realizing that zero trust paradigm. How do we sort of build upon that? It's a whole collection of things, and we're a part of that.
Awesome. All right. So now that we have the basics covered, let's drill into the why behind these recent integrations. So Josh, do you want to start? What are some of the challenges and opportunities that led to the initiation of these integrations?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier about vPro, managing those remote devices outside the corporate network has become the norm, but it's also very, very challenging. So for instance, helping users that are working remotely get back up and running with a troubleshooting session or re-imaging a device when they're remote. These are all common issues that many IT managers are facing today. And when the OS is down. So traditional remote connection management tools don't really work when the OS is not functioning, or when you're doing bare metal installs, for example, or when you simply just want to wake up a device when it's powered off. And this is a common misconception today for UEM solutions. They really only work when the OS is working and healthy. And again, this is why out-of-band support for IT is so important. It basically lets you connect to these devices when you need to do it, you know, when it's most important, and that's when they're down.
You know,
Got it,
so
Chris.
you mentioned something super important there, and I'm going to differentiate. So today's world, all management for most organizations, the command and control, like where do devices, and we're talking about the Windows operating system, where does it get its command and control from? What's really important about this triumvirate solution, I'm marketing that term now, with the three of us together, is the command and control of the endpoints is now a cloud construct. Okay, so think about this. Today, the command and control of your Windows endpoints, by and large, and I'm not making fun, I'm not picking on anybody, maybe a few people, just a little, it's a Windows file share. So do you understand that a Windows file share, quick question, do Windows file shares work over the internet? Anybody? No, they don't, right? There's a reason we don't use Windows file shares for websites, because the protocol doesn't work. So we have protocols that do work over the internet. With a distributed workforce, it is imperative to shift the command and control of your endpoints to a cloud construct. I'm not advocating for a specific solution, although it should be VMware Workspace ONE. But I am advocating for a command and control point that's no longer attached to a legacy construct of a Windows file share. Now, what's great about these things coming together is that now the baseboard management, hence Intel vPro, has a cloud command and control point that integrates with another cloud command and control point for operating system lifecycle management, which integrates with a Dell cloud command and control point called Command Suite with Workspace ONE for firmware management. So what we're really doing here, it's more than just like, hey, let's all get together and have a good time. It's a fundamental shift of where devices get their management. We already know the most successful way to manage and control devices, mobile providers have proved this now for a while, is with a cloud-based command and control point. Hence, oh, look, I got a new device. Look, I signed in with my ID. I got my stuff. That's exactly what we're doing here with our dropship onboarding, integrated with Dell shipping, integrated with Intel vPro, and then that cloud-based command and control point, it just works anywhere. So it takes a lot of time to ship devices around when they're broke. It's manual, it's intensive. I don't know if anybody out there loves F12 Pixie Boot. Like, if you're really in love with that, I'm sorry. We have counselors. Here's an 800 number. But those are all the things that come together so that we no longer have to be chained or tethered to a physical work location. It's not about just work anywhere. It's not about just remote work or post-pandemic work. What it's about is providing command and control, security, compliance, all the things regardless. That's why this triumvirate solution is exceptionally beneficial to our customers, and all the ones that we've been able to work with so far have been pretty pleased with it, right? There's always a hiccup here or there, but I like to blame it on everybody else. So it's never my fault. I'm teasing.
Yeah, that was a good recap there. So from my perspective, I think all of us have been, some of us have been IT people, some of us have been end users, some of us have been both, right? And my perspective is, as an end user, I have a problem. It always happens right before you're about to do a presentation. And the last thing you want to do is physically walk into an IT shop and say, my PC doesn't work, and have to sort of get that whole process started. Or worse, get a loaned PC, or worse, wait for software to be uploaded or downloaded or whatever. And so it really is about, to Chris's point about the cloud construct, is being able to sort of IT touch those end users at their home, at Starbucks, on a fishing boat. Sometimes that might be me. I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny that, but it doesn't really matter where. And it's really just sort of extending that capability so that everyone has flexibility. Even the IT guy, they can be working from home. Nobody ever talks about that, right? And so it really is just that part that is the why. And then I think really understanding, and we've thrown out this term a few times, out of band. There's a lot of products on the market that can connect to your desktop. I won't name any, but you can connect to an end user's desktop and start doing things. Heck, you could do it in Teams or WebEx or whatever. And that works sometimes, but when the operating system is, dorked up, that's a technical term, you can't do anything. Yeah, exactly. And so that's where those particular products are gapped. We can't connect to the device, and we'll show you in a real demo how we've connected the device below the OS to do things, right? And so I think from my perspective, that's the why.
Awesome. That's really helpful to understand how this has evolved. So Gus, how would you summarize the top benefits of these new integrations?
I think it kind of falls in 4 buckets. Pretty easy from my perspective. It's obviously security, right? We all talk about that, but with this integration, we're securing the devices. We're making sure that they are secured, and then we can also fix them in a stopgap scenario if we can't get at the device. For example, imagine that somebody's got a virus on their device and it's just propagating and creating problems. Well, we could shut the device down, but how do we fix it? Do we just throw it away and give them a new one? No, we can reload the OS. The manageability things, we've talked about that, right? Being able to do it from a one-stop shopping scenario. I've already got these devices under management in Workspace ONE. I can see all those devices. I see their security posture, but now I need to do something. Being able to trigger a connection from there to the device out of band, it's just a thing of beauty, right? And so having those features with Emma and AMT all accessible from one tool from a Workspace ONE perspective makes it just a really good thing. Performance, right? Let's never forget the employees need to stay productive. If they're not productive, your company doesn't make money. And ultimately then as an IT organization, your charter is not there, right? You've got to keep those employees making money for your company. And we've got to think about it like that, is making sure that we are in a scenario where we're performing well from an employee standpoint, but also from an IT organization. We want to be able to get on that device, fix it quick, get them back on the road, or making money for the company, so to speak. And then the last thing is really stability, right? We don't want to have any blind spots. We don't want to say, we can fix 97.6% of the problems. It's always that last 2.whatever% that are the real big ones that causes the biggest problems. So we want to say we have no blind spots. We can consistently provide support 100% of the way in time. And guys, am I missing anything or leaving anything out? Can y'all add anything to what I just said?
Yeah, so I'm going to add something because there's an interesting comment in the chat. Like, are there ways that this can help the pushback on this return to office nonsense? Movement. The answer to that is yes. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of Goodfellow. So Goodfellow was a lead AI researcher who worked for a very large company that sounds a lot like a fruit. And when they made everybody come back into the office policy, he said, that's it, I'm gone. So he's since gone on to do many other things. And all of the other things he's done have had amazing press in the AI world and are making quite a movement. So this is a way when you help communicate the idea that geography, that inside, outside no longer matters. The decentralization has happened. and you as an IT group have the tools necessary to tangibly manage that, I think that can make a great pushback on that environment. But the primary pushback on being able to stop companies from saying everybody back into the office is productivity. And productivity is driven by people simply being able to do their work. If they can do that, then you don't have executives and looking like who's doing what. How come I don't see productivity? Because people are at home, out in the back playing with their dog or whatever. So I think that's an important aspect. And to Sean's question, you can absolutely remote wipe a Windows PC, restore the operating system. And with Dell Support Assist, you can cloud restore, which is kind of cool. So lots of value there. JC, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think just to add to your point on, or Gus's point on time savings. So from an Intel perspective, having all of these features from Intel EMA or Endpoint Management Assistant and Active Management Technology, AMT, accessible from a single tool makes it very easy to use. It allows you to get that PC, back to a known good state, no matter where the employees are or how they're connected. And additionally, we can now easily locate those devices for setup and configuration or provisioning, as well as the actual use case execution, all from this tightly integrated solution. And the integration also handles the push of the packages needed to configure the vPro devices against the Endpoint Management Assistant. Basically, that's how you turn on AMT, and it makes it very easy. And it also allows vPro use case execution via that Workspace ONE console using a set of REST APIs. So it really simplifies all of the actions an administrator would have to do in order to realize the power of AMT.
Absolutely. So interesting thing here. We talk a lot about the value of vPro. So Josh, how long has vPro been on PCs?
So I think it's from 2016 or so
yeah. In IT terms, it's like forever. So here's what begs the question: how come you're not using it already? Because like all these features are there. So when we talk about the value of the three solutions together, one of the primary values that we see with this triumvirate solution is that we can instantly activate and automate all the Intel vPro side. I'm not saying it's difficult. What I am saying is it's probably a little difficult because people haven't done it already, because there's tremendous value there and you could just go do it. Like you could go read the documents and deploy an EMA host, and no, it wouldn't be integrated, but you could do it today. The real question is, why haven't you? I mean, this sounds pretty great. This is cool stuff. So Dell brings us the secure supply chain, robust hardware, low mean time to failure, all the command suite utilities. Intel brings us the performance, the secure integration, the SGX out of band management. And when we bring it together with Workspace ONE, what we're doing is we're being that glue that enables all the Dell stuff to work, enables the Intel vPro to get activated so that you can now have one place to go and be able to make it all happen. And without like a postdoctorate in Intel vPro, as much as I like that, questions like how much bandwidth does it take to restore a remote OS reset that Angela submitted in? Well, it takes as much as it takes to download Windows. So from that perspective, that's essentially what you're doing. The out of band management, it's like screen scrape protocol. There's practically nothing there. The lower the bandwidth, the worse it's going to be for the support guy, but much better to have a slow screen than no screen. And then when you run the restore, well, I imagine they'll go get some coffee and let it run for 20, 30 minutes, whatever it takes. So yeah, we've been pretty successful with that. So anyhow, I'll go.
That's a great summary, Chris. Thank you. So Chris, actually, as we head into this demo, could you share some more details around how customers can enable these capabilities if they already have all of Dell PCs with Intel vPro and Workspace ONE?
Very cool. Yeah. So if you have Dell, start using Command Suite, like use it. Like there are people that buy Dell and then don't use it. And I'm not sure what's going on there. Just go ahead and use it. 2, if you have Workspace ONE, go activate it. So there's no cost. This is a birthright feature of anybody with Workspace ONE UEM. So all you have to do is submit an incident and say, hey, turn on the Intel vPro integration. That's all you got to do. Now, for the Intel piece, there's a server. The server has to run somewhere. It can run in your data center. It can run in Azure or any cloud you choose. It does need internet connectivity on 443 and 8080 inbound to the server. But that's it. You need those 3 components. Once you have those components set up, you go into Workspace ONE, you put in a username and password, and you point it to the URL of your EMA server, and it integrates everything. It creates the application that gets deployed, the integration, devices start popping up with the Intel menu, and then Bob's your uncle.
That seems pretty easy. Awesome. So how do these integrations improve the value for customers compared to competitive solutions?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So in the case of active management technology and Emma, it's really the only commercial remote remediation solution that helps get your PC back into that known good state, despite the location of that PC, even when the OS is down. So again, any software-based tools stop working immediately once the OS is down or it's unhealthy. And this leads to, like Chris mentioned, shipping the devices back on site or having to make that drive back to the office to get them healthy again.
So I'm going to share some resources. So overall, like how do you integrate this? What does it do? Here's a link, right? And I'm going to share with you a study done with a customer. Like there has to be value to do this. So what is the value to a customer if they do the integration? Essentially, dollar value, you're looking at 75% fewer steps. So anytime you can do fewer steps, you're going to improve customer satisfaction. You're going to reduce IT overhead. That's the reality of it. Not because humans make mistakes, but humans make mistakes. Right. So, essentially the integration is pretty straightforward. The total economic impact is very strong. I see a question in here about others. Right now, the Intel vPro Workspace ONE integration is exclusive. Doesn't mean you can't use Intel vPro with other tools like MECM. You certainly can. They're just not integrated. They're separate.
All right, finally, so security is at the top of everyone's minds. You all mentioned some of the security benefits of this integration, but can we take this a step further with zero trust? We know many organizations are exploring zero trust as part of their long-term security strategy. How does this integration across these 3 technologies help IT teams activate zero trust principles?
Yeah, let me start. First of all, I want to say, that term is used a lot, right? But I want to say that it's a journey, right? I call it a paradigm. It's not a prescriptive set of things, right? It does depend on a company, in terms of like what kind of business are they in? Are they, a defense contractor or are they an education system? That all depends, right, on how you secure devices and where you secure your data, et cetera. But in essence, I'm saying it's a new way of thinking about the way you secure devices. I said earlier where you basically have devices and you don't know what their posture is. You don't know who owns the device. It could be my device, it could be the company's device. It's just really assume nothing, right? I mean, that to me is what zero trust is about. Assume they're in a worst case scenario and protect the device against that, right? But when you do that, you got to do it in a way that the end user is not, basically precludes him from doing a great job, right? We all know that you could 100% secure any device by just turning off all the networking and boom, they'll never get a virus. but is that productive for the end user? I use that as a grotesque example, but my point stands is that we always have to be mindful of whatever we do to secure that device needs to be balanced in a healthy way. And that's really what zero trust is just understanding that balance. And this is a piece of a collection.
I would say, or I would add on there, the foundational piece that Intel offers in this area is hardware, basically the security technology at the hardware level that enhances the software security controls. So speaking to the Emma solution specifically, we're constantly improving the security aspects of the solution. And for example, on the next release, we're actually targeting more granular access controls by giving admins the ability to grant access to use cases on a user-by-user basis, which is part of that zero trust enablement. And we're also constantly looking for different ways to enhance security and improve usability at both the hardware and the software levels.
So Gus and Josh, I would like to buy 2 boxes of zero trust. And if you could, give my credit card, I'll have that. To your point, Gus, it is a journey. It does take more than one thing to achieve because there's 5 pillars to zero trust. 2 of those pillars are device trust and identity trust. One of the things we're doing specifically is bringing those together in a tangible way. So does Intel say the device is healthy? That's one attestation of trust. Does Dell say the device is healthy? That's another attestation of trust. Does the next generation antivirus say the device is healthy? That's another attestation of trust, all of which are device trust. What we're doing is we're taking that censored real-time data, bringing it into identity trust. So when Gus goes to open up, Google Workspaces, or when Gus goes to open up Office, or when Gus goes to open up SAP or whatever, at that moment, we can attest or have attestation of the device across all those device trust layers to say, you're behaving badly, no access for you, or, hey, things look pretty good, come on in. It's really bringing that info from Dell and Intel together to make real-time authentication decisions that is a continuous verification. So even afterward, let's say you've been connected for 4 hours and something comes up, and this is, of course, our vision of where we're headed. Something comes up and the device all of a sudden says, well, I'm not as healthy as I was 3 hours ago. Something's wrong. Now we can change the authentication behavior to say, hey, prove who you are again, right? Maybe here's some multi-factor. Maybe here's another RSA prompt. But it's really, honestly, any vendor who says, here, buy my software, buy my device and have zero trust, right? I mean, very politely just push them down the stairs. Not really. Wouldn't advocate for violence. But instead utilize the intelligence within the categories of trust to meaningfully bring them together. That's ultimately what we're doing with this solution.
Great clarification. All right. Well, I am excited to see a demo of this. Gus, I will hand it over to you to lead the way.
Yeah, thank you. So let me get this shared out here. Let me know when it's showing up. Let me
see it.
Looks good.
Okay. Well, first disclaimer, not a live demo, but was a live exercise. So I mean, I pre-recorded this. You can see my little face up there on the top right-hand corner. And I did this in the interest of time, right? Because I want to make sure we leave some time for a Q&A, but I will be skipping through the video and showing you the exciting parts, or the more interesting parts, I should say. It's all exciting. So without further ado, what we're doing is showing the Workspace ONE UEM console, right? And so I've connected or clicked into devices, and I'm seeing that context, right? So all the devices are enumerated here. These are devices under management in this little lab environment. And so I'll click down in some of these things in a second, but notice that some of them have tags and some of them don't, and that's on purpose. As part of this integration, those tags get created so that it enables options into these out-of-band connections into the vPro technology on the Intel side. And so we'll drill down in that a little bit. So first thing I show here is I'm down in groups and settings in the console. And basically you show all of the integration. Sorry, I saw something in the screen here. Hopefully it's not bothering the demo too much. But you show the status is connected. And basically in this integration pieces, you're setting up connection to the Intel EMA server that is running in the background, right? So I'm just clicking through some of these things, but you can go do a device discovery in case you add new devices. You can resync with the endpoint groups that are on the EMA side. But this is really just showing some of that. What does that integration do? Once you do that, it creates some basically installation bits, right? And we mentioned that earlier. And this is sort of a drill down into that installation. So it creates this package, which at this point is just like any other software package that you would deliver via Workspace ONE. In EMA, UEM being the endpoint group on the EMA server. And so I simply provision that to whatever smart group or whatever set of devices I want. And then those devices then become enabled for this integration into the through the EMA server and through Workspace ONE, right? So we'll skip ahead a little bit here, kind of show some more pieces of this integration. What I'm doing here, and feel free to jump in, Chris, to show some things here or talk about some of these things. Now I'm looking at the individual device and just really sort of re-verifying that we have, those applications installed or that application installed. You'll notice that, again, I'm hovering over those tags to show you that we have association. You'll see the Intel EMA tags. These tags get created to basically contextually launch those options, and we'll show you how do we make an out-of-band connection, a remote KVM connection from here. Without those tags, then those options don't get lit up for that particular device. All right. So clicking down in the device, looking at applications, you'll see, boom, we have that EMA UEM application installed, which triggers all of those actions that I mentioned earlier. All right, so let's move into our scenario, right? Our scenario is we have an end user that's got a problem. Their particular device does not, the operating system is not working. They're like, I don't know what to do. And we're like, we've got a problem. Houston, we've got a problem. So at that point, we're going to decided that rather than troubleshoot this problem, we're just going to remotely reprovision the OS. And so that's really what our scenario is. I mentioned earlier, this is a device that has no tags, as you can see on the right. So it's just got this, the more actions are the default actions. But at this point, I'm now going to the device where I have provisioned, and you can see these new Intel EMA options open up, right? The out-of-band options are as implies, right? Regardless of the state of the machine, whether it's in the OS or at the BIOS, I can trigger power on, power off, or restart functions to that device, irrespective of its state, right? And so these are just 3 default options that an admin might want to use. But kind of moving forward into the remote KVM side of things, we're going to
something that's important about that power on, power off is that can also be scheduled. So imagine you have a remote workforce and they're not patching, right? So patching is imperative when it comes to security. So from that perspective, you can do, this isn't wake on LAN, okay? This is actual SIRA initiated, client initiated remote access, SIRA initiated, certificate locked wake of that endpoint to wake up at a certain time. Then Workspace ONE can do what it does, patch the device. Oh, we're all done, shut it back down. Again, no longer being bound specific to like, oh, wake on LAN, because you don't have a LAN anymore. The device is at somebody's home. So those power options are pretty important there. The drastic case is like the operating system is hosed, right? So that's what Gus is going to show next. But this helps us even when it's just, hey, I just need to patch the thing.
Right on, right on. Okay, so at this point, we decided we're going to go down the remote KVM option. So it launches this little dialog saying, hey, we're going to make a connection to the Emma server. You can see up in the top of my browser that I've connected to our Emma server. You notice that big long URL, that's a contextual connection to a device, right? So I don't need to necessarily go into the Emma server and then figure out which device I'm working with. It's dropping me right in here. And that's kind of what I'm showing you is I've got other devices in this particular scenario. And I may not know what that device is. And so it's much easier to contextually launch is really my point here from Workspace ONE and not have to figure out which device I want to connect to. So I'm restarting that connection just to kind of show how I contextually launch into that device. I make that connection, and then I log in, and then I'm at this device, right? So I'm going to skip forward a little bit to actually making that connection. One call out here is you'll notice under the desktop section here is where my mouse cursor is. I've made a connection to it via this mode, right? This is not an out-of-band connection. This is a agent-based connection. It's like any other way of connecting, like WebEx, Teams, whatever. It's an option for an admin to make a connection to an end user's desktop should the operating system be functional, right? And so that's really what I'm showcasing here. But pretend that operating system's not working. So continue to play along with me. We don't have a functional operating system, and we're going to fix that, right? So we're going to connect to a different set of options. In this case, the hardware manageability tab. And these are where we get our out-of-band options. So crazy mouse, just kind of showing that we've got that URL at the top associated with that device. I'm going to click the hardware manageability tab soon.
Something you do see on the screen here is CIRA, C-I-R-A connected. And essentially that's your client initiated remote access, which is just the chipset itself reaching out to your EMA host, so our EMA host periodically. So even on Wi-Fi, you can wake on Wi-Fi, wake on LAN, and it's done through that CIRA integration.
Thank you for that. All right, so at this point, I make that remote desktop connection. Again, this is out of band. And here I'm learning how to use the mouse where I need to click. All right, so the connections, I hit the connect button, I initiate the connection to the device. Obviously the operating system's running here, but it really isn't in my scenario, in my MAD scenario here. And so I'm gonna reboot the device. So this is where that transition in that sort of scenario where we tell you that this is where we sort of lose capability on other tool sets, right? And gain that functionality here is that the operating system is no longer going to be running, but we're going to persist a connection to this device. And so it is going to start rebooting. I'm here hitting F12, which I tend to do 100 times to make sure I catch it, but I'm hitting the F12 because like everybody knows in an elevator, the up arrow or down arrow, if you hit it 100 times, it works faster, right? And so that's why I'm hitting F12 a lot of times here. And I will eventually boot up into the BIOS of that Dell device, in this case, a 9520. And so I have a lot of options here. So my point here is that I could make a BIOS change. I could restore the operating system. I could even update the BIOS from here. I have a lot of functions that I can do here. Change boot order, all kinds of interesting things that don't require me, the end user, to bring the device to me physically, right? So skipping ahead, we're going to go and initiate a Support Assist OS Recovery, which is the tool set. Pausing here for a second. This tool set allows me to do a whole bunch of different things, right? I can scan the hardware and run a set of diagnostics. If I feel there might be something wrong with the hardware, I can try to repair the OS, which incidentally, I'm told by the stats on this particular tool that it's very, very resilient in restoring the OS. I'm sorry, in repairing the OS, so you don't have to do a restore. So that's an option. I can recover files, and then ultimately what I'm going to do is an OS reset. And I'm not talking about an OS reset inside the OS. I'm actually talking about a bare metal restore of the operating system here. So skipping ahead here to where we actually kicked this off. In here, I'm showing I actually kicked off the scan hardware. I'm running the diodes. I'm not running the full diagnostic tool, but it shows you that I could run those. Again, all of these are running below the OS, which is critical capability here. And then I'm ultimately choosing the reset. Let me scan forward a little bit here. Let the video catch up with me here. Kind of a one point here that I'll make there in full disclosure. I'm asking the end user to put a physical cable in, right? Because I'm using the wireless NIC for this out of band connection. I can't share that in the recovery scenario. So if I had to ask the end user one thing in this particular situation, and that's, you know, connect it to your router on one of your ports with a hard wire, just so that I can kick this off. All right, so at this point here, we've skipped forward, but we've kicked off the OS reset capability. And so we get asked a bunch of questions. Are you really sure? Do you need to transfer your settings and data before we kick this off? My end user is using OneDrive, so all his files are out in the cloud. I don't care about any data that's on there. I'm going to say no and not back up my data. Let this video catch up here with me. Okay, so you see I've highlighted no, do not transfer my data and settings. I'm going to hit next here, answer a question to, are you really sure? And then another question saying you're going to delete your data, make sure you know. And then I start getting a sort of a answer one more question, and then I get a manifest of what's happening. First thing I'm doing is downloading the operating system. Then I download driver packs, and then any requisite pre-installed software. And then you'll notice down here, it says approximate runtime 1 to 5 hours. I can tell you, I said that earlier in the chat, 300 megabit home internet, 10 to 15 minutes to download and start rebooting so that you can run through your UV process. So a really pretty fast recovery process. And so that's what I wanted to show you today, is really the art of the possible, right? I've shown you how I remotely initiated a remote reinstall of the OS on this particular device. Obviously, that's going to take another 10-15 minutes, so I won't go through the whole thing. But I could make BIOS changes. I could do a whole bunch of activity here. So hopefully you all enjoyed that demo. Chris or Josh, I don't know if y'all wanted to add anything to it, but that's what I wanted to show y'all today.
Yeah, something that's interesting. So what's to stop your weirdo administrator from just like connecting to machines remotely? Okay, so what you don't see here, because Gus is the administrator and he's connecting to the remote machine. When you connect to the remote machine through the Intel vPro, it has a red and yellow border all the way around the edge of the screen, flashing like circus lights to warning. Yeah, somebody's connected remotely. So just from that perspective, it's definitely helpful that you're able to see that, and the end user knows like, oh, somebody's actually connected right now.
Good point.
Awesome. Thank you, Gus and Chris, for that great demo. So we are out of time. Sorry that we didn't have space for Q&A, but we are collecting all the questions and making sure that they're all getting answered. So to recap for everybody, this integration between Dell PCs with Intel vPro and VMware Workspace ONE enables improved cloud-native approach to monitor, restore, upgrade, and protect your Dell PCs, whether in or out of band, all from the ease of one pane of glass, the Workspace ONE console. Thank you to all the panelists, Gus, Josh, Chris,
You're
for
welcome.
being here today. Really appreciate this deep dive in this conversation. For everybody on the call, if you're wondering what's next, if this discussion has inspired you to learn more, you can use this QR code on the slide here to get additional information. If you're interested in learning more about Dell PCs with Intel vPro technology or VMware Workspace ONE, please contact your Dell sales account team. Alternatively, you can reach out using the contact form link here on the slide. And then, as our panelists mentioned earlier, there's going to be continued updates and integrations in the partnership moving forward. So watch your social media channels. You can see the handles here on the slide. And then finally, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's session. There'll be a post-event survey coming to you as mentioned. And with that, I will hand it over back to you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Just to reiterate what Jocelyn said, keep your eyes on your inbox for the post-event survey, and we're looking forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you and have a good day.